Hi everybody, welcome to this Assessment 3 Finalisation and Submission video. I'm going to step you through a significant amount of detail that ensures everybody can finalise projects, get them submitted and meet the Assessment 3 detailed task requirement. So let's jump in and acknowledge, in fact, indeed it is a detailed and multi-layered complex brief that you're working to here, which is in fact deliberate. We want you to gain experience in working to a very detailed brief, acknowledging that out in the real world we are often working to briefs that are very specific, very detailed, things that must be in the production, things that can't be, and the deliverables required to be delivered in very specific ways. So we're going to step through a very similar process in delivering your Assessment 3 task. So it requires everyone to be really clear about it, to be working through this detail. It's a great point at this stage of moving through the Assessment 3 task to review the Assessment 3 details document, which contains a lot of information about planning and undertaking production, but equally a lot of information about finalising the project. So now would be a really great time for everyone to review that. The presentation in which we'll work through in this video, again, is a supplementary resource that should make very clear everything that is required towards meeting this complex brief. And of course, meeting the brief is acknowledged by the meet task requirement criteria. And when you look at the CRA, you'll see that that is in fact embedded in the highest percentage of the criteria. It's worth 40%, along with your ability to demonstrate your understanding of a traditional narrative structure. They are clustered together deliberately so. So trying to meet and understand and deliver what is required again is a central learning outcome to this exercise. So we're going to move through again the very specific detail of this. The good news is, again, a lot of the information you'll already know. The rest you'll come to understand through this video and the associated resources, but I'll also remind you as we get closer to due dates via a series of announcements and emails. But here's the big picture, of course, critical information, that the bulk of the deliverables associated with this assessment task are delivered online, and they're largely all due by 11:59 p.m. on Friday the 28th of October. That's, of course, the last working day of week 13 in our academic calendar. And with all those online deliverables delivered by that time and date, then essentially your group will turn up with the one required deliverable to be presented in person at the assessment screening scheduled for Monday the 31st of October, the first working day of week 14. And that, again, will be the production file that will bear down into the detail of that. But, of course, it's really clear to be everybody in the group is across these details. So, in fact, this should be part of the first step of ongoing conversations as the entire group work collaboratively and collectively towards meeting, again, this complex brief. So indeed, make sure everybody understands the times and dates, make sure everybody's got them in their diaries or calendars, and if there's any issues along the way in the final weeks of the semester, by all means feel free to come and have a chat with me as the unit coordinator. Reach out to me via email, or we can catch up to discuss issues over coffee in a real setting, but just don't wait for issues or problems to develop into last-minute crises. Again, the idea is you're learning through production methodology not to allow crises to develop at the back end of the production when meeting these finalisation and submission processes are so important. Okay, so let's jump in and have a look at an overview of the complex number of deliverables. You can see there's a bit of a snapshot. You'll find this snapshot also available in the Assessment 3 folder on the Blackboard site. And you can see it is a snapshot. First of all, we need to finish the film, and actually once finished, we need to deliver that film, demonstrate our ability to, in a very simple way, distribute the film, and that's via submission or upload to Vimeo or rather YouTube. It can be one or the other. Now, most of you have had the opportunity to upload something to YouTube, even in an introductory production unit. We kind of recommend get a deeper experience by uploading something to Vimeo if you haven't done it before. But we've given you both options, knowing with the camera we're using in the unit now, which is able to shoot 4K. Unless you've got a paid subscription to Vimeo, there will be a cap on the file size you can upload to Vimeo. And so we're giving the or option of putting your finished film up on either Vimeo or YouTube. And of course, it's got to be a public setting. Again, we'll talk specifically about the details of all these deliverables in greater detail. But after putting that master version up on a publicly accessible platform, then you will also deliver and submit into a OneDrive folder a master backup copy of your finished film. So in fact, that backup master serves as something of a plan B should in the assessment screening we go to access your film on either Vimeo or YouTube and it not play for whatever reason, acknowledging they are both third-party platforms. We'll always have the opportunity to go to your backup master file that you will have submitted to this OneDrive folder. And you can see after that, of course, we need either the Vimeo or the YouTube URL submitted online, and then accompanying 4 pieces of post-project documentation: a Vimeo/YouTube form, a copyright clearance form, a final revised version of the risk plan form that you've been working with throughout the semester, and finally a peer review form. So that top area of the image there makes up all the online deliverables, and as you can see, they are the ones required to be submitted by 11:59 on Friday the 28th of October. Then the one and remaining element to be submitted is submitted in person at the assessment screening on Monday the 31st of October, the first day of week 14, and essentially that is your project's production folder. Again, we'll bear down into the detail of what should be included as we go. So keep in mind this snapshot of all required deliverables, again, can be found here. It can also be found in the Assessment 3 folder, and just ensuring you're working your way towards delivering each and every one of these, because they are all mandatory elements of the assessment task. They're all required deliverables. All right, let's jump in and talk about the details of some of these to start with. First of all, this final video file. Now, all of you have made a decision to shoot your material and potentially move your project through a 4K workflow, or if it hasn't been that, it'll be a high-definition workflow, a 1080 workflow. Now, the final outputted file, now keeping in mind the outputted file needs to be output from whatever post-production software you're using. Don't use the often inbuilt ability of post-production software to send your finished project directly up to Vimeo or YouTube. In fact, you need to output a final version of that project. Now, again, when you do it, make sure it's either the 2160p, the 4K option, or a 1080p high definition resolution option. It can be either of those two. Then make sure the file format is either MP4 or .mov as two potential file formats. And if you're using software that allows it, choose a H.264 codec. And software like Premiere Pro will give you that option. Now, really importantly, when you generate that final version, here is a very specific format that file has to exist in. So you're going to create a version of the film with 1 second of black at the head of the film. So it's been 1 second of no image, it's complete black, and it's also mute, so no associated sound. Then you can start your 3 to 5 minute live action narrative. We'll see the film play out, including titles and credits. And then following the end of what will probably be the credit roll at the end of the film, 3 seconds of black, again mute. Before then, we'll experience 5 seconds of an ident board, a project ident board with very specific information, which I'll talk about in a moment. Then after the 5 seconds of the ident board, we'll need again 1 second of black, that is mute. All right, and each post-production software will give you the ability to, of course, generate the these elements of black and with no audio. to generate a title that will be ultimately your project ident board, containing this very specific identifying and technical information. So we'll have the ability to demonstrate to that if you need it in the last couple of weeks' tutorials. So by all means, please feel free to ask that relative to the post-production software your group is specifically utilising. But most people by now will be familiar with the functionality of post-production software that will allow finalising the project in this way. All right, so in terms then of that ident board, here's the information that ident board must specifically present. So we want to see the unit name and code, okay, KPB122 Screen Crafts narratives, the year and semester of production, for us, semester 2, 2022. Then your group number, there by example, group 1A, but of course you'll have your own group number. Give us your project's title, and by the way of example, the Furry Angel is the name of this example. Then in that ident board, give us the name of the official group member. So this is enrolled students in the unit and what kind of role they undertook. And keeping in mind those roles may have been shared. It's okay to indicate that more than one person shared a particular role, but give us the basic information of who did what in that ident board. And then finally, a really critical piece of technical information, the exact duration of your film. Now, keeping in mind it needs to be between 3 minutes and 5 minutes, and we've got the upper ceiling here acknowledging we've got hours, minutes, seconds, and frames, and you need to tell us very specifically the duration of the program. Now, keeping in mind the program duration refers to the project itself. So from the moment we first see the very first image of your film, now it might be fading up, or it might be cutting up from black to a title, or it might be cutting up or fading up to an image. But essentially what we're talking about here in terms of duration, as is the case always in industry, we're talking about the duration of the project itself. Now, the duration will end as we leave the last image of the film, which may be, again, a credit roll of some sort. We might fade out from that credit roll to black, or we might cut out of it to black, but essentially that defines the duration of the project, as opposed to the duration of the overarching master video file, which will be longer, of course, because we've got these seconds of black and ident board. Again, the technical information contained in the ident board is always referring to the duration of the project specifically itself. All right, now so again, check in with the academic staff if you've got queries or questions about that. Now, when you generate this MP4 or MOV version, it's going to be the first of probably a number of times you do very important technical checks. So once your post-production software has outputted this final master version, of course, you have to sit and watch it, right? And it's sort of acknowledging, again, you're dealing with technology, you're dealing with software, and all sorts of technical gremlins can, turn up and wreak havoc, which just means you've got to apply quality control processes. And that means at this stage, you stop and you watch for the entire 5-minute duration, potentially. You watch the film in detail, making sure what has been output by the software is exactly what you're happy to be graded on, right? And once that is the case, and if it's not, go back and output it again. Just do another pass of outputting, and then you'll need to sit and watch it again. But once you've got a master outputted version of your finished film, then we can name the file. Now, again, this will be the first time you're dealing with very specific naming conventions. In fact, all the deliverables you are delivering are required to have very specific naming conventions. And so here's the first one: the master video file itself must be titled in this way, and you can see it's the unit KPB122 _SEM2 _2022 underscore your group number, by way of example, group 1A, and then underscore followed by your the title of your project, the production title, and again by way of example here, the Furry Angel. So that example there should be the reflected in the naming convention of the video file itself. Okay, so then once you've got that file, you will upload it to either Vimeo or YouTube. Again, that choice will probably be dependent on how large the file is. But once you've found the right platform to put it on, put it up. But ensure when you put it up again, it is put up as a master file containing this naming convention. And again, if you need to see any demonstrations of outputting or naming files or putting things up on either of these video streaming platforms, of course, ask for a demonstration either in the week 11 or the week 12 tutorial, which is the week 12 is the last chance for any in-class demonstration just prior to your submission. All right, so once, of course, we're looking to put it up on either of these two platforms, Vimeo or YouTube, it's really important, of course, in terms of demonstrating your ability to, in a very simple way, distribute your output, is that you set it to public. And on Vimeo, that's often expressed as anyone can see the video. On YouTube, it's often expressed as public. But certainly what you can't have it is unlisted or private. It must actually be publicly available towards meeting the learning outcomes of the unit and the task requirement. All right, so once successfully uploaded, you've got it there sitting on one of those platforms. Then again, you must sit and watch it. Apply that technical control, that overarching kind of quality control, and sit and watch it again for, again, might be another 5 minutes. Just being really certain that what exists up there on either Vimeo or YouTube is exactly what you're happy to be graded on. And it's, again, knowing it's another technical process. Again, some technical gremlins can do something during that upload, and suddenly it's no longer what you would expect it to be, either visually or orally or both. All right, so again, another critical moment to do technical control. Then, of course, once you're happy with it, there it is, and it looks and sounds like it should, you're going to importantly note that Vimeo or YouTube URL, because that will be one of the elements you will submit online along with this post-project documentation. All right, so moving on, why all that's so important is this critical reminder that when we're in the assessment screening, as is always the case in production units, that screening is conducted under exam conditions, which basically means what you upload and what we go and look at during the assessment screening under those exam conditions is what the assessment panel must assess you on, which just basically means what that link takes us to is absolutely what the group is happy to be graded on. And this again just means ensuring you've tested, you've uploaded, it's playable, and it's playing back as expected. Now again, we will have this plan B where you will, once you've got your film up on Vimeo or YouTube, you will submit a backup of this master video file into this OneDrive folder. And you can see the link there, it's embedded in this presentation. I'm just going to click on it and it'll take us to it. And here is this this file waiting for all submissions in this unit. You can see there's semester 2 2022, and by 11:59 on Friday of week 13 we'll have 20 master files sitting in this file. Okay, to take us back now, again, why that's again so important, acknowledging Vimeo, YouTube being third-party platforms. If we attempt to go and look at those uploaded masters during the assessment screening, and there's an issue with playback, and that's sort of acknowledging it's third-party. The issue could actually be at Vimeo or YouTube's end. We will have these backup copies to watch under the exam conditions of the assessment screening. So again, really important that both options submitted in those two different ways are representative again of what the group is happy to be assessed on. So a critical reminder about those technical checks. Okay, so there again is a reminder about the naming convention of that backup file in the same way that you've named it as you've outputted it from the software. No need to change it. Keep that naming convention the same. It's just you will then drag and submit that backup copy into that OneDrive submission folder. And again, a reminder about the resolution and file format options along with the codec. Okay, keeping us moving. Once we've got those two versions of the film submitted, then we can turn our attention to this post-project documentation. And already we should have one of those. The Vimeo or YouTube URL will already have standing by. Then, along with that, we're going to need to submit 4 pieces of post-production paperwork. And you can see them listed there: a final revised version of your risk plan, a Vimeo/YouTube form, a copyright clearance form, and a peer review form. And we're just very quickly going to talk about each one of those, starting with the final revised risk plan. Now, each production group has worked, it's probably spent a lot of time through pre-production and indeed production, knowing that there is that green changes column that we're coming back to during production, and maybe making notes about not what the plan was that we defined during pre-production, but what we had to change to, given different things may have arisen on your set that meant your plan had to change. So keeping in mind that risk plan document is a live document that should be getting updated as soon as practicable during the shooting phase. So there quite likely will be a number of point form notes made in that changes column, that green changes column. Again, we'll have a look at it in a moment, reflecting what did need to change during production. Now, that will be one element of defining this new final revised version of your risk plan. Once you've listed all those changes that took place, then coming back and actually jumping to this second paragraph here, there's a box on the front page of the document that's the list changes or variations. And really what that is, it's a summary of all the changes that took place that you probably put more detailed comments and point form notes in, again, during production. You've came back and made those notes in the changes column, and then we just summarize and put some point form notes in the list changes or variations box on the front page. And then finally, there will be this other important box that defines the final revised version of your risk plan. It's the post-project comments box. Right, and again, knowing that, a lot of time and effort went into developing this plan in pre-production, and things changed and stuff happened during the shoot. Then it's a case of the group will need to come back prior to submission of all materials and just have this very quick conversation that will generate some point form notes that go into the post-project comments section. And essentially what they are is what worked about our risk plan, what maybe didn't work so well, and what did we maybe learn about working with the risk plan, right? Just some very simple point form, common sense kind of things. And again, it's not that you're ever going to be judged. It's just this is reflective practice. It's a critical part of your developing professional practice, that you are then reflecting back on what worked, what didn't, and what you learned out of working with a critical document like this. So again, to some point form notes in that box. Again, we'll have a look at it in a moment. And because you've made these changes during production and in post-production, of course, this will all mean a modification history update will need to be made, that this will generate a new draft, and it might be draft 5 or draft 6 or draft 7 by now. But it will just mean, because there's new material going into this document, the final element of finalizing the document will be coming back and putting a new draft in the modification history section. Okay, and just by way of demonstrating, we'll have a look in a moment, but once we have generated this final version, of course this naming convention comes into effect again. We must rename this final version of this file in this configuration. Again, very similar to how we named the outputted film, but in this case it's your group number and then what this thing is, the final revised risk plan. And of course you'll save a copy of that to your desktop, preparing one of the required deliverables that we'll be needing to submit onto Blackboard shortly. So just by way of, again, pointing at where these elements are on the risk plan document. Again, this is an empty template. Certainly by the time you've gotten to production, you've got a very detailed document. So it's sort of acknowledging that the areas this final revised version will deal with. Is this a list changes and variation? Again, this will be the summary of what ultimately is down in this changes column. So during production, again, keeping in mind anything that's green is about what changed during the filming process, during the production phase. And again, throughout, you may have needed to change an approach to the electrical. Something changed that meant you had to apply a new plan, and you just make a couple of point form notes here in that section about what changed and maybe what controls you needed to put in place that ensured that change was low risk, that you could proceed and everything was, again, safe to do. Now, keeping in mind, these changes could apply in any and all of these sections that you've been dealing with in the risk plan. It's just really important to come back and note what did change and what allowed you to continue ensuring there were controls that made it low risk. All right, and so again, what that green column, in terms of the specific expression of what changes, allows ultimately the person dealing with this document to come back and make some broader summary kind of points here in the list changes and variation box. And those summary points, again, will then be bared out in terms of the detail that's below in the changes column. All right, so they're two very important parts that must be dealt with towards defining this final revised version. And here's the post-project comments box. So again, in that box, the group will supply just a handful, again, just using common sense and thinking through, okay, what legitimately did work about it, what, was problematic or maybe actually didn't work. And equally, what do we all learn out of working with this detailed, plan? Just some point form notes in there. Now, the best time to have that conversation, I would suggest, is towards the back end of the semester, when you may be even drawing the group back together to look at a really advanced cut of the film. It might be even after the week 12 tutorial, that, as we're getting very close to the end of week 13 submission date, it's highly likely you're going to bring the group back together and just take a look at the most advanced cut of it. And there might be some feedback at that point. Let's try this. Let's tighten up this bit. Let's add this element. That's probably the best time, because we're at the end of virtually at the end of the process. And it's an opportunity then to just very quickly have this conversation. What worked about our risk plan? What didn't? What did we learn out of working with it? And then again, probably the production manager keeping this document will make some point form notes in this box, defining, again, this final revised version. And then, of course, I'm going to remind everybody about this modification history box that, again, you guys emptied out at the start of the process and began defining each and every draft. Of course, make sure when you delineate this final revised version, there's a new date, it's created. In terms of sections, you can put here changes and variations, changes column, post-project comments. The fact that we're really just dealing with those essential elements defining this final version, you can list in the sections. Again, acknowledging it's being approved or looked at by your unit coordinator or my initials JT, and just then indicate this is the final revised version of or draft of your risk plan. Okay. Don't forget the modification history box. Again, it is one of the most important pieces of information because it legitimizes the draft, and thus it legitimizes the form itself. Okay, and as an adjunct to your insurance coverage, of course, it's really important that the modification history box is accurate. Okay, back to our presentation. So that's sort of defining our final revised risk plan. Now, moving on to the Vimeo YouTube form. This is, again, just a form that contains some essential descriptive information about the project. And some of this information, in fact, you may choose to put on Vimeo or YouTube, just designating aspects of the project, and which, in fact, may position it or make it easier to find. All right, and so the template that you'll use, you'll find in the Assessment 3 Resources folder, which again is in the Assessment 3 folder itself. Go and find that template. Again, someone in the group can be designated just to be filling that information out. And sort of keeping in mind, because there are a bunch of deliverables associated with finalising this assessment task, indeed, the group should be looking to delegate. Not, one person shouldn't be doing all of this. Again, delegate, each element out to a member of the group. And again, it's the idea of many hands make light work. All right, and so we're going to put some information. Again, I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. Place your description in a box. And again, it's essentially a cut and paste exercise in terms of what that information is. I'll show you in a moment. And again, it suggests that you can include there any other social media outlets or anything else you maybe generated in terms of connected with making this production. There's also a reminder here about if you've got a really good customized thumbnail, it's often great to include that in this form, and in fact, include it in terms of identifying the film on the platform, because this important statistic that 90% of all successful videos have custom thumbnails, and that means more views and more interest. All right, so again, once we've got it, we'll apply this naming convention. You can see very similar to before, your group number and what this is, the Vimeo YouTube form. Make sure you apply this naming convention. Then you're going to park it. Again, you're going to be preparing to submit this as one of this collection of post-project documentation. Now, keep in mind, it's probably a good idea in terms of what information is contained in this form that it is replicated either on Vimeo or YouTube, and it might mean going back and having an update to that. So let me just again show you what this form looks like. Here it is. Right, it's the Vimeo YouTube form, and it's just asking for some very specific, descriptive, identifying pieces of information. And the best way to deal with this form very quickly is just to copy what it is, what it's asking for, and put it down here, and then apply your group's information. Supply the production title. Again, the unit code's sort of up to date there. Provide a synopsis, then importantly, not just the unit code, but the full unit title. It's also then asking for cast and crew information. I would suggest strongly then also indicating not just individually, but note your group number. Again, it could be a very easy way to identify and find your material if needed. And then think about some important search words that, again, may be helpful both in identifying and finding your content. Again, feel free to add any, social media links or anything. But then down the bottom, there's specifically a link box here. Now, again, if you're looking to attach the thumbnail in that links box. Now, when you attach the thumbnail, if you do it, keep this document then a Word document. Don't save it as a PDF. Again, the thumbnail is not easily retrievable, right, from the PDF, but it's very easily retrievable from the Word formatted version of the document. So keep it a Word document. Simply supply that information, and then think about replicating it on Vimeo or YouTube. Okay, back to our presentation. And again, you'll find that Vimeo YouTube form in the Assessment 3 resources file, or the template for it. All right, copyright clearance, again, is a pretty simple form. Won't take you long to fill out, but its purpose really is to grant permission for the creative outcome, the film itself, to be used on something like Blackboard or any other learning management system in the future. And probably you guys have all really benefited from seeing previous student work, having a look at those Assessment 3 films and seeing what worked, seeing what didn't. This just becomes a way to formalise agreement that between the production group and the university that, yes, we can look to use that as a critical teaching resource. So again, have a look at the form. I'll show it again to you in a moment. Again, once you've filled it out, very simply, apply the naming convention, same as before, but now it's the _ copyright form. And in this case, it's a case of print it out, fill it out, sign and date it, and then scan a copy. So you've got a copy, electronic copy ready to submit along with the rest of the documentation. Okay, save it on your desktop, ready to go. Now, I'll show you what that looks like. Oh, and before we go to the peer review, let me just show you what this document looks like. That's it. And in fact, there is a Word version of it, right? Which, again, you can use in terms of filling out the information and the address. And now, who needs to fill this out? It can be filled out by one of the group members on behalf of the group, acknowledging everybody in the group is a producer. You're all sort of servicing the production in some form as a producer. So it just needs to be filled out by one member of the group on behalf of the group. And in fact, there's nothing wrong with putting Jason Tolsha, in terms of my name, and then maybe in brackets on behalf of group 1A again. Keeping in mind we don't need every student in the group to sign this form or fill it out, just one person on behalf of the group. And then importantly, the idea of either printing it out and then signing it. Again, make sure you're clicking on the boxes and you're indicating, yep, you're of 18 years or older, making this, legally, you're legally permitted to sign on behalf of the group. That you do grant the license in terms of it being used on Blackboard, and then a signature and date. Now, again, a digital signature, in terms of just using a digital tool to sign, is not sufficient. The only digital signature that can be applied here is a registered digital signature, which again could be registered through a site like DocuSign. But again, some software have the ability to register a signature within the software itself, like Acrobat. Adobe Acrobat has a function like that. My advice is, just fill it out, print it out, do a physical signature, scan it, and again, it'll be ready to submit along with the rest of your documentation. Just again, remember to assign the naming convention for the file. All right, and then on to our final piece of paperwork, which is this peer review form. Now, you'll all be familiar with the peer review mechanisms that they're embedded in every production unit. Similarly, the best time to deal with that document is, again, at that very late arriving, probably sometime in week 13, when you're bringing the group back together to look at that advanced cut, knowing that the bulk of the work for the assessment task is virtually out of the way. Again, there might still be some work to be done to finalise the production, but by that stage, the group can have an informed conversation about, have we largely all pulled our weight, maybe in very different ways, but largely equally, and thus are we all happy to get the same grade for the film? Or if that hasn't been the case, that there is a negotiated understanding about applying percentages. All right, and again, in some way, yes, it's acknowledging, did people pull their weight, maybe in very different ways, but there may be very legitimate reasons why people weren't able to participate as much as others. And indeed, this is part of your professional learning, is to be able to have these professional conversations, managing professional relationships. Importantly, not only are you hopefully developing the skill to identify your own strengths and weaknesses as a creative practitioner, but you need to be able to develop the skill of doing that for your collaborators, figuring out what worked or what didn't work about your collaborative relationships, and having what can be sometimes awkward or difficult conversations, but it's part of the professional practice that everyone is bringing a professional perspective to this conversation, and not allowing it to denigrate into some sort of personal conflict, or personally attacking somebody. Right, at the end of the day, it's the project and how the project got across the line is what really peer review is about. So sooner or later, every group member will have to sign this document, and by signing it, it's an indication, yes, we're all happy to get the same mark, or no, we're not, we're agreeing to different percentages. But by putting your name and your signature on the document, that's an indication you are in agreement with the rest of the group. All right, so again, this document will be familiar to everybody. Again, we'll have a look at it in a moment. Keeping in mind, there's a very simple way to work it out, right? That, it just may purely go back to what were the total hours. If that was the total hours it took to create the document, we can do a simple maths kind of exercise. But but keep in mind, again, the percentage you agree to is not the percentage you're getting, right? It's a percentage that will be applied to what the film is graded at. So, maybe you weren't able to participate as much, and that means, oh, look, I'm happy to get 60%. I mean, the example here says 40%. Let's just say it's 40%. If you agree to 40%, it's not that you're getting 40% for the assessment task. You're getting 40% of what the film is graded at. And again, by way of example here, if the film itself is graded at a pass, what you're agreeing to is 40% of the numerical value of the pass, right? Which might mean, as an individual, you may fail the assessment task, but that doesn't mean you fail the unit. In fact, in these introductory units, unless you haven't participated in one of the assessment tasks, it's often very difficult to fail numerically, right? So it's just being very clear on what you are agreeing to when you negotiate and then sign the peer review agreement. Okay, so talk it through. And again, if in any instance where a group can't come to an agreement, it's a case of you will be called into a meeting after the assessment screening. We'll be unpacking what transpired in the group, what was the approach to facilitating the production, and then ultimately I, as the unit coordinator, will make a determination. And as always, it's the unit coordinator's determination is final, but it'll be based on unpacking the different perspectives and approaches you all undertook. My advice is part of the exercise is to develop that sense of professional practice and come to an agreement. Okay, but we'll be here to support you if you haven't. And then, of course, once you've generated this final version of the peer review agreement, you're going to, again, apply the naming convention to that file. Again, park it, and we're getting to the point where we've got all of our post-project documentation on our desktop ready to submit. But again, apply the group number _ peer review form naming convention. Now, again, before we have a look at that, I'll show you this document. Again, it should look very familiar. It's a lot like the one used in 101 or 117, but the good news is there's no requirement to have kept that log along the way. Being a more advanced production unit, we expect the professional practice to be elevated, which means there's no obligation to keep the log. You should just be able to have professional conversations about what is a fair representation of everybody's participation, right? And it's either yes, we all pulled our weight equally, but maybe in very different ways, so we're all happy to get the same mark, or it's a circle around no. And then in either case, everybody writes their name, puts their signature next to their name, and if it's yes, there's no need to put a percentage. Everyone is getting 100% of what the film is graded at. But if it's no, indeed, it's write your name, signature, and then a percentage that you and the rest of the group are happy represents fairly everybody's participation. All right, and again, a familiar document that shouldn't cause too much problems at this stage. Now, with all these elements, your URL, either Vimeo or YouTube, and these 4 pieces of documentation, you are now ready to submit everything. And here are the step-by-step instructions to do that. Keeping in mind, only one student will do this on behalf of the group. Again, as a group submission, it's not that everyone does this, it's just one person does it on behalf of the group, which means all these elements have to be available to that one person, ready to submit. Oh, jump forward. So you're just going to go to the Blackboard site, make sure, again, that person is logged in under their QT username and password, not someone else's. Of course, this will be logged to that person and the group they're associated with. Click on the Assessment tab, the Assessment 3 Narrative Video Production Creative Output folder, and again I'll show you where these are in a moment. You're then going to click on the Submission window. Now this is the post-project documentation submission link. It looks a lot like the Assessment 3 project proposal submission, but in fact, by the time you get to deal with this, that window will be closed, and this one only will be open. But double check it's the post-project documentation submission link, right? And then once we're into that, you're going to then look to submit the Vimeo URL or the YouTube URL. And you do that by clicking on the assignment submission section. There's a write submission and embed media box, and click on that. It'll open up a box into which you can paste your Vimeo or YouTube URL. Once you've pasted that in, then you're going to go to the attach files section and click on the browse local files button. And once that opens up, you're able to then choose and attach the 4 pieces of documentation: the final revised risk plan, your Vimeo/YouTube form, copyright clearance form, and your peer review form. Now, keep in mind you can attach multiple documents at once, and in fact we want you to do that. Make sure, again, you simplify the submission by submitting everything at the same time. And keeping in mind, yes, you can go back and update or make multiple submissions, but again, you make it easier for everybody if you just submit everything at once. And keeping in mind, it's not like there's unlimited submission attempts. You have limited submission attempts, so get it right, double check everything the first time, and then when you're sure it's right, click submit, and you've met the online submission requirements. And once you've done that, then you can turn your attention to this final deliverable, again, the one delivered in person at the assessment screening. Before we have a look at that detail, though, let's go to the Blackboard site, and I'm jumping onto the site here just to sort of show people where all this information is. So I'm in the assessment tab, and I'm going down to the assessment 3, narrative, film production, creative output. Again, you can see the broad detail there, but now's a great time to remind people about the Assessment 3 details document. Again, make sure you're dealing with that document along with this presentation when working to, and again, they complement each other, ensuring you meet the requirements. So be using both documents, but that's where you'll find the Assessment 3 details document. Here again is the Assessment 3 resources, and if I go into that, again, this will be where you'll find the template for the video, YouTube form, the clearance form, the peer review form, and you'll be dealing with your risk assessment already in terms of a draft. But that's where you'll find those 3 templates in the Assessment 3 resources folder. If I just jump back now, underneath that folder is the submission window. So this is where as a group, one person is going to come and submit on behalf of the group by clicking on that link. Now, it looks slightly different when you come in. It'll probably have your name and your student number, but again, it'll be a reminder about when this is due, time and date. Again, the submission details we've just been through, and this is the text submission, the write submission, and embed media. So that's where you would cut and paste your Vimeo or YouTube URL, and then come down and in the attach files area, click on browse local files, find those 4 files ready to attach all 4, agree to submit the materials in terms of plagiarism tools, and no need to add any comments. In fact, try to avoid adding any comments to clutter the submission, and then simply click on submit. And with those 5 elements, your URL and the 4 pieces of documentation, your online submissions are submitted. All right. Now, just going back there, again, there's the submission window. Just again, make sure it's the post-project documentation. Now, this video, again, you will find underneath the submission window, along with the presentation that we're working our way through. There it is there, and there is the video. By all means, feel free to come back and review either of those documents, the recording or just the presentation. Again, ensuring that you must meet the task requirement in terms of this very detailed brief. All right, and underneath that is the snapshot of the Assessment 3 deliverables. Again, that critical document that's embedded in the presentation, but this is a place you can come to quickly find that detail. Okay, back to our presentation. We're getting there almost. The final element is this production folder that your group will need to turn up to your assessment screening. Again, Monday, 31st of October, the first working day of week 14. You'll get a lot of communication about the nature of that screening day. It'll be broken into 2 sessions essentially, and you'll be required to come to one of them that your production group is assigned to. But when you turn up, again, your group needs to turn up with this production folder. Now, what the person probably keeping this production folder and tasked to bring it is probably your production manager. And that production manager should be receiving paperwork throughout, not only just pre-production, but production and maybe in post, building essentially a production Bible for the project. And it will include all sorts of project production management paperwork, particularly the what we conceive of as the essential intellectual property, the chain of title paperwork, which are your on-screen actors standard release forms, the volunteers and visitors forms, the location agreements, anything to do with copyright in terms of music or any other artwork that's specifically been embedded into the production. So all those pieces of paperwork that prove you have permission, for anything that's made it into your film, essentially, we'll be looking to interrogate when we look at that folder at the assessment screening. Now, what should also be in there is a lot of other materials, drafts of scripts, marked up versions of scripts, shot lists, marked up versions of scripts maybe for performance, lighting plans specifically. Again, we'll be desperate to interrogate Did you actually undertake recce's where you generated lighting plans, continuity notes and paperwork, production design? Again, anything that anybody's generated throughout, a copy of it should go into this physical Bible, your production folder, and we'll be taking a brief look at it at that assessment screening. Your production manager will leave with it. They won't leave it to be assessed any further than us interrogating some of the paperwork. And it'll be really important that they do leave with it. So just again, be throughout the process ensuring that document is getting is having the paperwork flow into it that represents, again, the planning during pre-production and during post. Okay. And look, so that's sort of, again, some reminders about some of the other things you'll find in there. I've mentioned a lot of them, but you might have generated call sheets and editing notes and all sorts of things. Again, just make sure a hard copy gets into that document and it's there for review at your assessment screening. Then finally, just a reminder about this critical resource. Again, I've shown you where it is in the Assessment 3 folder. Be using it. Indeed, meeting this obligation to tick the boxes that you've met each and every requirement in terms of the number of deliverables, knowing how and when they're delivered, and the group is meeting the complex brief. So keep that in mind. Come back to this resource or find it in the Assessment 3 folder. And then here's just some final pieces of advice. It is detailed, multi-layered, and again, many hands make light work, which means, first of all, make sure the work is distributed, that there's a discussed plan about who's dealing with what piece of paperwork and what element of submission. But then most importantly, don't leave tackling these finalisation and submission processes until the last minute, because in fact dealing with all that process and paperwork and the fact that some of it requires being submitted online and you're dealing with technology, just assume you're going to be the unfortunate group that the technical mishap is going to happen to, which means you never schedule submitting all this stuff to the last minute. If you experience unexpected technical issues in the submission and you miss this submission window, the deadline passes before you've been able to submit, again, it's almost impossible for us as academic staff to be able to grade it without involving heads of study in schools and faculties. So it just means the answer largely will be no. You're not permitted to assess it if it comes in after that due time and date. So it just means the professional practice is, because we're out in the real world, that these deadlines and deliverables have immovable deadlines, right? So we've got to learn the practice of ensuring we've met that deadline, and that means don't leave everything to the last minute. There finally is a reminder about these key differences: online delivery by 11:59 Friday 28th of October, and bring your production folder to the assessment screening on Monday the 31st of October, week 14. All right, keep an eye out about announcements. This is a broad but detailed kind of expression of this detailed brief. You will get some reminders in the lead up to week 13, the deadline, and then the assessment screening in week 14. Keep connected with the Blackboard site and checking your QT emails, again, towards ensuring the entire group meet this complex brief. All right, that's enough. It's a lot of information. Again, feel free to come back and review and make sure your group is discussing and putting in place a very specific plan to achieve meeting this complex brief. All right, thanks everybody. I'll leave it there. Look forward to seeing the fruits of all your hard work after a very busy semester at that week 14 assessment screening. We'll see you soon.